Welcome back, it's Zion from Uke On Demand, where we go beyond just strumming and bring you fingerstyle song lessons and tabs. So in this tutorial, we're going to go over the song The Way You Look Tonight by Frank Sinatra. We're going to go over the entire song in this video, but you can get all the tabs over at ukeondemand.com. So let's get started. So to begin, you're going to start in an F chord position, but this is going to look a little bit different than your standard F chord. Instead, you're going to get into your basic F chord shape and add your ring finger. So it's going to look like this. You're going to have your middle finger on the second fret of the G string, open C, index finger on the first fret of the E, and ring finger on the third fret of the A. And if you notice, in this measure, it's got that swung rhythm, and we're going to be hitting most of the strums on the offbeat. And so if you think 1 and 2 and 3 and, we're going to be strumming on those ands in between the beats. So first up, we're going to strum down once, chunk, and if you don't know what a chunk is, it's this. You're simply going to curl your fingers into a relaxed fist and let them, as if you were strumming across the strings, just let them fall. Make sure your palm falls on those strings so it mutes them. And then up, same chord, up again, and chunk. Alright, and that's the kind of the basis for a lot of the measures in this song. So it's going to be down, chunk, up, chunk. Alright, and a little more up to speed. Down, chunk, up, chunk. Alright, so that's measure 1. Moving into measure 2, all we're going to do is move the middle finger. We're going to leave the index finger where it is and move the middle finger over to the second fret of the C string. And instead of strumming this time, we're going to come down, and with our index finger on the C string and our middle finger on the E string, we're going to do the same rhythm we used in the last measure, and go pick, chunk, pick, chunk. So essentially you're just going to swap out strumming with picking those two strings. So one more time, pick, chunk, pick, chunk. You're just going to be hitting that second fret of C, first fret of E together 3 times. So a little more up to speed. Moving into measure 3, we're going to leave the middle finger where it is on the second fret of the C, and we're just going to add the ring finger to the third fret of the E string. And now, as you can probably tell, this is all quarter notes for this measure, so everything's nice and even. So you're just going to pick the third fret of the E and second fret of C together. And then open A. And now we're going to go into a G minor 7. And that chord looks like this. You're going to use your index finger and bar the first fret of the A string and the E string. Then you're going to bring your middle finger over to the second fret of the C, and you're just going to leave the G string open. Right? And you're going to strum that once. Then simply lift off, pick open A. Then, moving into the last measure of this bar, we're going to go back to the rhythm that we had in the first 2 measures. And we're going to be playing a C5 this time. And a C5 looks like this. You're going to have open G string, open C string, ring finger on the third fret of the E. And we're going to ignore the A string completely. So you're just going to pick G, C, and E together. So again, it'll be pick, chunk, pick again, pick, chunk. So one more time. Pick, chunk, pick, chunk. little faster. So putting that entire bar together that we just learned will slowly sound like this. Moving into bar 2. Now we're going to start out with a regular F chord. So, and this one is simply the same shape that we did just a second ago, except you get to remove your ring finger from the fretboard. So, and these are back to quarter notes, so everything's nice and even. Strum down once. Go ahead and flatten that index finger, or if you need to, you can actually just move it over to the first fret of the A, but whichever method you choose, you're going to pick the first fret of the A string, and then we're going to go back into that F chord that we played at the very beginning of the song. So just simply add the ring finger to the third fret of the A string, strum once. And then come back down to the first fret of the A, pick once. And then from here, I'm going to leave the middle finger where it is on the second fret of the G. But now we're going to add the ring finger to the second fret of the E string. This is a D7 chord. And we're going to go back to that offbeat rhythm. So first it's going to be strum down, chunk up, up, chunk. So one more time. And a little faster. Then we're going to go back into a G minor 7, which we learned just a moment ago. And back to quarter notes. Actually, these last two measures are all quarter notes, so everything's even. I'm going to strum down once. And from here, after you've strummed, you're going to just add your ring finger to the third fret of the A string and pick that by itself. And then from here, just still leave that chord where it is. Now we're just going to add the pinky to the 5th fret of the A. And so it's still that original G minor 7 shape down here. We're just going to reach up that pinky up here. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but here's what it will sound like. Just going to strum down once. And then we get to shrink it back down, just pick that 3rd fret of the A string one more time. Moving into measure 8. We're going to go into a C7 chord shape, which is nice and simple. You're going to have open G, C, and E, and then index finger on the 1st fret of the A string. Strum once. Then middle finger or ring finger, whichever one you prefer, to the 3rd fret of the A string. Just pick it once. And then to the 5th fret of the A. And then to the 7th fret of the A. So we're about to hit that really high part where it goes. But first, let's play this entire bar one more. Now that we've learned it, let's put it all together. So starting with the F chord at the beginning, playing it nice and slowly all the way through, here's how it will go. Alright, now moving into the 3rd bar of the song. So we're left here with the ring finger on the 7th fret of the A. All we're going to do from here is move it up one more fret to the 8th fret of the A. And then we're going to lay the index finger down on the 5th fret. All right, you're going to fret all the strings. So this is a bar chord. It's actually another type of F. Once you've gotten to that shape, so barring the 5th fret, ring finger, or sometimes some of my students prefer to use their pinky for this shape, you're going to have that on the 8th fret of the A, and you're going to follow that same rhythm, that offbeat tempo. So I'm going to strum down once, chunk, up, chunk. So down, chunk, up, chunk. All right, and from this F chord, we're going to move down all the way to this, and we're going to have the index finger on the 1st fret of the E string and the open C string. It's the only two we're going to pick together, and we're still going to follow that same rhythm, much like at the 2nd measure of the song, where we had it with the middle finger and the 1st fret of the E, but now we're just going to have the 1st fret of the E and open C. So pick together, chunk, then pick again, pick, chunk. So pick, chunk, pick, chunk. All right, moving into the next measure, we're going to have lots more quarter notes. So back into this shape, we're going to just have the ring finger on the 3rd fret of the E and the middle finger on the 2nd fret of the C. Pick those two together. Then pick open A. Then we're going to strum what's called a G sus4 chord. And that's going to look like this. You're going to have the open G string, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the C, index finger on the 1st fret of the E, and ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A. You're going to strum that once. Index finger comes down to the 1st fret of the A string, pick that by itself. And then into your normal F chord without the ring finger. This is a half note. We're just gonna strum down once. And then move into that C5 again. And again, we're just gonna strum one time. And that would lead us into the final bar of the song. But first, let's go over this bar, putting it all together one more time. So back into the bar chord shape. And this is a bar chord, so it might be a little bit trickier. So you're going to need to make sure that your thumb is right behind that barring finger so you can get plenty of squeeze in. And all the strings will ring clear. So back into this shape, and we'll play it slowly. Now we get to go into the final bar of the song. So we're going to begin very much like the beginning with that F chord shape. This is kind of the strumming outro before it loops again and repeats itself. So we're going to go back into that F chord shape and again strum, chunk, up, chunk. So strum, chunk, up, chunk. Alright, and then the next measure, so that takes care of measure 13. Now I'm going into measure 14. It's a little bit different. So you're going to start in your typical G minor 7 chord shape, and you're going to do the strum, chunk, up with the G minor 7. So do that first. Strum, chunk, up. And then from here, you're going to very quickly go into a C chord. And in case you don't know, C chord is this. You're going to have all open strings except the A string, and you'll have your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the A. And you're going to do that last up chunk with a C chord. So up, chunk, and that would finish out the measure. So one more time, the first two strums are G minor 7, so 1, 2, and then C chord up chunk. So one more time, G minor 7. So it'll be down, chunk, up, chunk. So G minor 7, down, chunk, up, and switch to C, up, chunk. Alright, and now we go into the ending. So first, we're going to start out in a regular F chord and do the same. This is exactly the same as 2 measures ago. So just play through it slowly since we've already learned it. And then that brings us to the final few notes before it loops again. And so we're going to strum a G minor 7 one more time. And then, since your middle finger is already where it needs to be, we're just going to pick the 2nd fret of the C string. Lift index finger off the E, pick open E by itself. And then pick the open G string. Then that would take you all the way back to the very beginning of the song, and we'd play through it one more time. But first, let's put this bar together. So back into that standard F chord, nice and slow. And then you get to loop it again, back to the beginning. And so on and so forth. Now, so once you get to that part and you essentially play the song again one more time, the ending's going to be exactly the same except for the very last measure. Instead of doing a G minor 7 and the picking, we're going to instead just play one F chord. It actually makes it a lot easier. So that last measure with an F would go, or that last bar with an F chord at the end would go like this. And that's how to play The Way You Look Tonight by Frank Sinatra. I hope you've enjoyed learning this song. To get the tabs, head over to ukeondemand.com. And make sure to subscribe below so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming fingerstyle tutorials. We'll see you next time.